That's us. We're live, apparently, but I'm going to double check that because I'm, as usual, a little perplexed. Hey, Dean Blundell.
Hey, buddy. How are you? You look verklempt. Is it verklempt or verklempt?
It's because I trusted AI. You shouldn't trust AI. People shouldn't trust AI. I know better than that, so I trusted AI. And it seems to be working okay right now. We're live. I can see across the networks, so that's a good sign.
That's good news. I
Yes.
mean, people being able to see us when that's the intention of this is, I think, paramount to the actual show, if you will, that people can see us.
Agree with you.
Welcome to the FiveStack, everybody. We got 5 stories today. We got a couple Epstein stories, of course. That is not going anywhere. And we've also got a few Iran stories today. That is not going anywhere. And we're going to kind of marshal you through these 3-5 stories so you can understand what Donald Trump is all about, what he's trying to accomplish today, which is control through fear, control through lies. I'm sure we'll get to the Tomahawk lie today, which I wrote about. I'm sure we'll get to a whole bunch of stuff when it comes to testimony around Epstein. We got the Pam Bondi subpoena coming up. We're going to have a little laugh about her because she is losing her fucking mind right now. She's persona non grata, which you knew what happened when Donald Trump was like, ooh, I got to get rid of her now. She's lost her good. She can no longer be a beachhead for me in my lies. So now he's up against it. So really excited to be here today, buddy. Really excited to see you today.
I'm excited to see you. Well, there's so much to start with. And as you pointed out, there's that incredible comment outside the White House where the president denies knowing about the destruction of a girls' school in Iran being America's responsibility. We're going to get to that story. But just breaking news in this last half hour, and I'm just going to do my best to give you these clips as they come in here. We had Jeffrey Epstein's personal accountant, Richard Kahn, sitting for a closed-door deposition today before the House Oversight Committee. And it's quite amazing what came out of this room. Now, they don't have the full transcript out, but what we do know is that Kahn confirmed the names of the 5 clients who paid money directly to Jeffrey Epstein. Some of these we knew. In fact, most of them we knew. But these are the main 5 clients. Les Wexner, Glenn Dubin, Steven Sinofsky, the Rothschilds, and Leon Black. That's the first time we've had 5 names on the record from someone inside the very world of Jeffrey Epstein, the accountant. He would know those 5 names. Those are big names. Les Wexner, of course, L Brands, Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie and Fitch, Glenn Dubin, famous for his whatever you call it, fund, one of those funds that predicts the future, hedge funds. I don't know much about Steven Sinofsky. Do you know much about Steven Sinofsky?
I don't know anything about Steven Sinofsky. I know a lot about the Rothschilds and a ton about Leon Black. And I know that each one of these co-conspirators or people that paid Jeffrey Epstein directly for his services is wrapped up in the business of Jeffrey Epstein across the board, whether it be money laundering, whether it be arms races, whether it be supporting alt-right governments, hard-right governments, regime changes, weapons exchanges, et cetera, crypto, real big deal in crypto. And I want everybody to keep in mind that Mr. Kahn today, when he was providing testimony, and we're getting drips and drabs right now, he was fairly forthright. Kind of had to be, right? He's sort of in a unique position, being the executor of Epstein's estate will, being one of his lawyers, a guy who was charged with taking care of this stuff. He, for lack of a better term, which is really shitty to say when you're Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, he's bound by that, and he can say all kinds of things, and he is covered by that. Now, court of public opinion being
he's
different,
the accountant, and I believe that he, as the accountant involved in the transnational criminal enterprise that was trafficking girls and other things across borders, he's in a hot position there. Right, I would think he knows things that other people. Corner. He's playing. Yeah, I mean, it's not something that you'd want to be. It's not like you choose to be the accountant of the biggest, well-known criminal in the world right now. You'd probably choose to avoid that because there's people are going to say, "Did you know?" And he of course he's saying he didn't know a thing, which
they're all saying. Let me just add that in. I got to tell you guys, I had no idea. Keep in mind, Richard Kahn was involved with Jeffrey Epstein for 22 years. Is that what I'm to understand?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
22 years. There is no one closer to Jeffrey Epstein's money, his operation, than Richard Kahn. So he knows. Now, here's where it gets interesting, where the spider web starts to kind of go out from these 5 people. These 5 people also had their own networks of degenerates, losers, regime changers, world leaders, elites, people that like to fuck up different countries just for fun, people who like to rape children and traffic women just for fun, and different governments and different intelligence organizations around the world. So it is not just Jeffrey Epstein, as Richard Kahn has just pointed out. It's the extended network involved in all of those extended networks that attach to every five people, all five people that were talked about today in the deposition, which is Leon Black, which is this Steven Stemopoulos guy, Sinofsky. And then you've got the Rothschilds, which, you know, that's in your wheelhouse. You know a lot about these guys. It's funny how their name popped up yet fucking again.
Yeah, Leon Black as well, and of course Wexner. Now, the Democratic Congressman Suhas Subramaniam told reporters that Khan disclosed the Epstein estate reached a settlement as well with a person who had also made accusations related to President Trump. Now, this is really important because over the last few days, we've had a lot of conversations around this 302, the series of interviews that were covered up by the DOJ, where the accuser or the person giving those interviews is saying that Donald Trump raped her. And all four have now been restored, I'm told, to the public record. Now, that was because a lot of us were pushing for it to be restored, asking what the hell's going on. This looks like a cover-up. So now there's a bit of data here that is so important because the Epstein estate did pay off this person, it appears. This is the person the president of the United States is accusing of rape, and she got a settlement. Doesn't mean she's guilty. It just means she got a settlement. But let's take a listen to that clip because it's really big news.
What you said about the settlements and with one of deadly Donald Trump's accusers you mentioned, can you clarify what you did there and what you learned about the settlement so far in general?
So we wanted to confirm that certain accusers had received settlements, and he confirmed that.
And any specifics on which
We'll wait for the transcript to come out on that.
So just to be clear, someone who accused Donald Trump of sexual abuse received a settlement from Jeffrey Epstein?
Yes.
Do you know how much that was?
Cool. I don't know how much it was, but we'll look for the transcript.
And this is the accuser from the FBI 302s that were initially missing. It was this for
I can't get into the details of that. I guess. Thank you.
There were 5 names in the chat. The guy is supplying some money to Jeffrey, including Muslim turn, and then live in my house, and the other patient thing of the where the name
and some of those names I think have been revealed publicly previously.
This is Wexner and
but look, everybody who has had deep involvement with Epstein needs to be investigated and questioned.
All right, let's get back to that breaking news that you have now. A Democratic congressman who says that Richard Kahn, the Epstein accountant, is confirming that there's a settlement that the estate reached with the person who accused Donald Trump of something. They're not saying it's rape, but we think it's rape because that's what was accused. That's what those 302s say. So that is, why would you come to us? Why would you agree to a settlement? Why would you agree to the settlement? Firstly, if it doesn't mean you're saying that person is correct. It doesn't mean you're saying the president is guilty, but you're obviously paying somebody off a fair amount of money for making accusations that you want them to disappear. You want them to go away. So is that part of a cover-up? Is that an admission of guilt? Where does this lead us down the line here for the president of the United States?
I think that's I'm gobsmacked. I haven't seen that clip yet.
Yeah,
I was aware of parts of his testimony. I'm so grateful that you brought it up. I believe that is the very first authenticated admission that someone raped as part of the Epstein files child trafficking rape ring that has been going around for 30 years has made an allegation in the FBI under oath, which is why we can't seem to find these, because if there's a settlement, we talked about this earlier, and there's an NDA, then there's a legal responsibility to remove that person's name and that person's account, because Donald Trump had reached a settlement with him, which we had heard about like 2 weeks ago, where everybody was talking about these secret settlements that had happened. But that is the very first admission from anybody involved with Jeffrey Epstein that Donald Trump reached an agreement to pay a woman off who was a minor at the time, from what we understand, for raping her. That is the very first admit. That is mind blowing. Can you play that one more time?
I can play it one more time.
Is it possible? This
yeah.
is fucking crazy.
Again, the accusations here were made about a time period in the early 1980s. It involved Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. There's a lot of sketchiness in the details of this allegation, but that doesn't even really matter here because the reality of it is
you don't pay somebody off for doing nothing. You don't pay somebody
Well,
off because you're fucking innocent. Number one, number two, and other people don't pay your accusers off. He's saying, Richard Kahn is saying, if I'm not mistaken, am I wrong?
Yeah.
He's saying, Jeffrey Epstein paid someone who accused Donald Trump of rape, a minor who accused Donald Trump of rape. Jeffrey Epstein paid this person off on behalf of Donald Trump. Is that not what he's saying?
The state did. I'm not sure whether they did it during it must have been after his death. I don't think it was before. I think it was after his death, but we'll take a listen to the clip again. But the reality of it is, you don't, if you're asking people to pay off, if people are paying off your accusers, which we know Trump has a history of paying off his accusers. This is not a new
31.
thing.
He's paid off 31 women for violently or otherwise sexually assaulting them over the past 38 years.
So he has a history of doing this stuff. If Epstein is paying off, if the state is paying off, it's not necessarily important whether he actually raped the person or not, because it is, of course, important. But in terms of the actual cover-up, what's going on here is the president was engaged, I think, while he was president, or Epstein was engaged while he was president in paying off the accuser. And that's a real problem. Let's take a listen to that again.
Something said about the settlements and with one of deadly Donald Trump's accusers you mentioned. Can you clarify what you did there and what you learned about the settlements so far in general?
So we wanted to confirm that certain accusers had received settlements, and he confirmed that.
And any specifics on which
We'll wait for the transcript to come out on that.
So just to be fair, someone who accused Donald Trump of sexual abuse received a settlement from Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
Do you know how much that was?
Cool. I don't know how much it was, but we'll look for the transcript.
And this is the accuser from the FBI 302s that were initially missing. Or was this for
I can't get into the details of that. I guess. Thank you.
Because we reserved 5 million to the champ. The guy is supplying some money to Jeffrey, including Les Wexner. And then
Let's stop it there because then he starts talking about the Les Wexner part. You know, did he say accusers or did he say accusers? Someone in the chat is saying that there were accusers that he mentioned there. I'll check the transcript again. But that is, damn, that's a big deal, right? I mean, Dean, we've got now the president in, and this would have been in.
It's everything, Zev. Like it's funny because we've got our heads in this stuff 24/7. You have your heads in this stuff 24/7. Ellie, the Wolfpack. Everybody that's done just this incredible work trying to piece together, was Donald Trump involved with, it's not just Donald Trump. Obviously, there's hundreds of others, and there are thousands, maybe millions of crimes. There are tens of millions of pages of FBI documents, investigative documents, CIA documents, DNI documents, witness accounts under oath that said Donald Trump raped them. This is the very first time, dude. This is the very and we got these 53 missing pages, which now amount to about 26, 27 missing pages that literally direct this conversation. And now we have Richard Kahn, who is Epstein's lawyer, who's in deep shit himself, trying to dig his way out of it to salvage his career, to say, hey, I got to tell you something.
But he's on oath. He's got to tell people. I mean, and this is part clear on the record. There's a settlement. Yeah, he will have to say it.
And I want to know what the details are. Everybody wants to know what the details are. But to my point earlier, Zev, this is the very first time we've got someone from Epstein's community going, yep, we paid off an accuser, someone who accused Donald Trump of raping her as a minor. You don't do that if you didn't rape someone as a minor. You don't do that if you're just like, because even if it's the estate after Jeffrey Epstein died that paid this accuser off, that's a fucking admission of guilt. You don't give to someone money if you didn't do anything wrong.
Well, sometimes people do give money if you didn't do anything wrong, but the fact that they did this on what appears to be on a number of cases, and the fact that we know that there are a number of instances where both the president and Jeffrey Epstein have been accused of doing sexual crimes in group sex or situations. Well, if that has happened, then you connect those dots. It's this. What's missing from the Epstein files is likely more mentions of Donald Trump doing these things. Because what it was, if you were going to take stuff out of the Epstein files, what would you take out? You would take out those things. Did we lose you? I think we may have lost your audio or something.
No, I'm trying to get
Yeah,
my
you're back
dog
there,
to
okay.
shut up. Can't
Oh,
do
no,
it
it's
now.
okay.
Let's go downstairs. We're good.
So, what else would you, if you're going to pull it out, you're going to pull out stuff that's contentious, right? You're not going to pull out stuff that's not contentious. The contentious stuff seems to be around the rape of underage girls, because that's the stuff that's been haunting this duo for a very long time. And now we've got the confirmation that there was a settlement from the estate. Now, they gave settlements to a lot of people. It should be noted, there are a lot of people got settlements. Some of them were victims of crimes. Some of them were enablers of crimes. Some people, weren't involved in any sexual activity at all, but were still given settlements. So there's a broad range of people who got, each victim, each survivor has their own unique story. All of it is one thing, but when you're talking about the president of the United States, who is either in office or out of office, if he was in office, he's also the person that the Justice Department stopped all investigations into Epstein after he died. His Justice Department, Bill Barr's Justice Department, turned off all those investigations, and then the Epstein estate paid off a lot of people. So that all strikes me as a cover-up, as a massive obstruction of justice, as a huge hiding of a criminal enterprise, which is what we've been alleging for a long time.
Strikes you as possibly? No,
possibly.
That's exactly what this fucking is.
Yeah.
Whether it was J.P. Morgan Chase and Jamie Dimon, whether it was any of the other banking institutions, specifically guys like Jeff Staley, whether it was Epstein's estate, there was a massive settlement. I think it was around $250 million that was given to victims of Epstein. We don't know if it came from that bucket. We don't know if it came from the J.P. Morgan Chase / banking bucket, where everybody was told to look the other way with these red flagged accounts and transactions that they knew were going to this. But then also we have this other aspect of it, which is the settlement. If this young lady's name is on it, and if this gentleman, Richard Kahn, the lawyer for Jeffrey Epstein, who gave his deposition today in a closed door hearing, if we get those transcripts, as he said, wait for the transcripts, you'll get more details. I can't talk about it. If those transcripts have the details, which I fucking hope they do. Like if Richard Kahn is serious about his fucking freedom in the next 5 to 20 years, he probably knows, and that looked like a man, and did his lawyer next to him going, hey, we're just here to tell the truth. This is important that we get it out. That Richard Kahn is a beaten man who is involved in some terrible things, who understands completely, if I'm to read him right, understands completely that telling the truth about who got paid off, specifically the fucking president of the United States. And listen, he's not a hero. Richard Kahn is not a hero. That fucking guy did all kinds of terrible things for Jeffrey Epstein for a quarter of a century. So let's not paint him as a hero.
He's not a hero here. No, he's a criminal,
if
obviously. He's
willing to give up the goods to save himself, that's good enough for fucking me. And
he can't hide this stuff. There's no hiding it.
Good at it, dude.
Yeah. Let's listen to one more clip. I don't know if this is similar, but let's listen to this other clip. It's also with the same congressman.
What happened with Jeffrey Epstein? He was able to commit heinous crimes and get away with them over and over again. And people around him were able to enable this financially, legally, and he was able to evade tax laws. He was able to evade justice. He was able to get away with a lot of crimes because there were white-collar professionals around him helping him fix situations, helping him get the best tax treatment, best legal treatment possible. And so we have serious concerns about this. We can't get into the details of everything that was said, but one of the things that we did learn was that there was another head of state that was mentioned as having financial transactions with Jeffrey Epstein, not an American one, and then another person who was an accuser of Donald Trump was given in settlement by Jeffrey Epstein's estate. We did confirm that. And so we're learning more.
So two bombshells there, by the way. The head of state, who is that? I mean, it could be one of two people. I think it's Putin.
Really?
I think it's Putin. I think that's who we know was a client, or, Jeffrey Epstein went around a lot saying, hey, it was, Putin's my client, whether he believed him or not is a question.
Hood Barak?
Hood Barak was there, but that's not new. Bibi Netanyahu is also a friend of that group, but I don't know if they're on the. I don't know if he was a client per se. But if you're looking at heads of state that had connections to Jeffrey Epstein, there aren't actually that many. And you've got Bill Clinton, you've got Donald Trump, you've got Putin, but he said not American. So you've got Putin, Ehud Barak, maybe Tony Blair was one of those. But beyond that, there's not a lot of people who are heads of state connected to him. So if it is Putin, I mean, I don't know. That is gobsmacking. If that's the case, you've got a sex settlement for a rape of an underage girl involving Donald Trump, and then you've also got Putin being involved in this whole network, and Russia. It seems an awful lot like there's a Russian criminal syndicate happening here, with all sorts of tentacles going all the way to the Kremlin.
Just for a second, for the sake of the conversation, can you imagine if it is? Can you imagine if this entire time Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump have been burning the world around them, murdering hundreds of thousands of people? Listen, and I
mean, I have been writing about it, so I can't imagine it. Yes, but
yeah, I know.
But yeah.
Do you really think that? You think it's Putin?
I know Putin. I don't. I'm not surprised by the Putin name. I'd be surprised if the Putin name came out in the setting. But I've heard various descriptions of Epstein bragging about Putin being a client and being a wealth manager. That's come out a few times. If we're getting that now from Richard Kahn, that's super significant. That's no longer. Now, the other person is the Queen. I should say she's a head of state, so maybe it's the Queen. Maybe that's the other person that is mentioned. Who knows? Because those are names that have been mentioned. But I've certainly heard Putin, and I've heard the Queen. I've heard Tony Blair, and I've heard Ehud Barak, possibly Bibi. Who knows who it was? But I think the bombshell there would be Putin, and I wouldn't be surprised that Putin's among his client list.
Well, neither would I. And strangely enough, if that's the case, right? It's funny how with each testimony, each conversation, each missing page and piece, and each redaction that gets unredacted and then redacted again, we get a little closer to the truth, right? We get a little closer to finding out why we're in the position that we're in. And if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, according to your incredible reporting and Vicky Ward and Julie Brown and Ellie Leonard and everybody that's been so incredibly invested in this, and if we're to look at the effort that went into shutting Thomas Massie up, Pam Bondi walking the plank, the threats, the war in Iran, the distractions, and I mean, you can set your clock to February 28th being the day after Pam Bondi gets her fucking subpoena delivered to her house, where you're like, you got to show up. That was the 27th, February 28th. Guess what we did? Well, not guess what the United States did? They fucking attacked Iran. And let's lean into that whole process too, where we find out that Putin is actively helping Iran target U.S. interests, Gulf interests around the region. He's actively giving intel, and Donald Trump's like, don't worry about it. Could it be as simple, Shalev? Could it be as simple that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are two of Jeffrey Epstein's best clients, and they're willing to fucking destroy the world around us, murder
it could be as simple as that,
thousands, millions of people just to fucking hide their perversion?
Or as I say in The Greatest Heist, that it's an operation created by KGB in the 1980s in order to destroy America, and that Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were two arms of that operation, and Vladimir Putin would make a logical third arm of that operation because he would be the man running it. And that, to me, it's not coincidence that we see Russia in every corner of the Epstein files. It's not coincidence that Donald Trump is so in bed with Vladimir Putin that he can't see daylight between his policies and theirs. It's not just by accident that we've let our Ukrainian allies down in the way we have. It's not by accident that we've, forced our allies in Europe and Canada to step away from us. Those things have all happened because it suits Vladimir Putin very well for those things to happen, including, by the way, going to war with Iran. I mean, all of that is great for Vladimir Putin. He couldn't be happier with what his team has done, even posthumously if Jeffrey Epstein is indeed dead. So, there's that is it's an operation that includes Israelis for sure. It involves oligarchs that span both Israel and Russia. And yet, who is it that's striking Iran today? It's Iran, it's Israel and the United States. I mean, it's like, it's not South Africa. It's not, some other country. It's the same group of countries, the same group of intelligence operatives operating in the same way. And that's why it's not as simple as that, but it is as simple as that. And that means we've been really, America's been done in by a huge traitorous, treasonous exercise to destroy America from within. And is it destroyed? I don't think it's destroyed yet. And I would hate to be Russia if it wasn't destroyed, because America's not going to shouldn't be taking this lying down. And for everyone who feels like their entire world has been shattered in the last 8 years, it has been shattered by this invasion by the Kremlin.
Yeah, good. It should. And I think everybody has to kind of have their heads on a swivel. Like, we're not going after Donald Trump just because he's a sycophantic rapist and a pedophile. I mean, I am. But there are a lot of people that are just trying to get to the bottom of this to get justice for victims, right? There's that variable. Then there's the other variable, but that people can't explain is that why would the United States just heel turn, abandon Ukraine, all of its allies, and do the absolute surgical bidding of countries like China and Russia? Well, fuck, I think we have that explanation based on the fact that we're here now. Is it Donald Trump? You can say what you want. You can believe any words that come out of his disgusting pedophile, rapist, felon mouth. You can, if you want, at your own fucking, at your own peril. But this, if it's Putin, and if we get the information, this makes everything make sense. They're willing to fucking murder schoolgirls in Iran. They're willing to start wars. They're willing to bomb 9 countries 626 times. Vladimir Putin's willing to invade Ukraine and literally serve up to the Ukrainian meat grinder the number that came out today, 1.4 million of his own people, to hide from the fucking Epstein files.
Not to hide from the Epstein files. He's doing it to get his empire back. He doesn't give a shit about the Epstein files. The truth of it is the Epstein files are convenient as well because they can throw a lot of shade on each other. Israel says it's Russia. Russia says it's Israel. It's a very funny game they play with each other. But it shouldn't be deflecting everyone's attention from the fact that they want a major world war to happen, that they want a major realignment of borders to happen, that they want the Soviet empire back, the Chinese want to take over Taiwan. There's a huge attempt to take over Canada and other parts of the North America by the United States. I mean, this is a redesign of the world. That's what they're after, and they want the Arctic as the key prize there. But the Epstein files is the vehicle with which we can find all this out, and that was a huge that moment when he was charged with that one crime of soliciting a prostitute is so significant, and thank God for those attorneys and the FBI investigator who pushed so hard for that to happen, because I don't believe any of this would have come to light if it weren't for those two people insisting on there's got to be something on the record. There's got to be something that he pleads guilty to. There's got to be something that he absolutely stays on as a sex registered, on the sex registration. I don't know, the sex registry. Thank you. And that's the reason we're here today, is that because of that, we've been able to find out so much because of, otherwise the Maria Farmer initial complaint of 1996 would have been buried. We never would have heard about that. It was brought back to life in 2007 in the second investigation. And she continues to this day to be the one person who was the initial whistleblower in this case, who has proven correct, since 1996. That was her claim back then. It was that they were running some sort of trafficking network, and she was right. We should move to the next.
For Maria Farmer, yes, we should move to the next one. But ladies and gentlemen, what happened today? Believe me when I tell you, will change a lot of stuff. What happened with the Tricon today? When we get those transcriptions, we don't know the details. This is increasingly more difficult for Donald Trump to run away from, which is fucking great news. Great news for victims, great news for the American people, and great news for everybody that's tried to follow up on behalf of the victims, and for the American people who have been defrauded and not just defrauded in the court of public opinion with information that's been hidden from them, not just lied to, defrauded to the tune of trillions of dollars over the past 40 years by the very people we're talking about in this very industry that just got laid out yet again. This sex trafficking industry, this cabal of fucking, global assholes and elites. Like, I mean, it's coming. And that's good news, despite how fucking egregiously sick this stuff still is. Yes. Sorry, time for the next story.
No, you're absolutely right. Actually, the number 4 story is still on Epstein, because Richard Kahn is testifying today in Washington. 1,000 miles away in the New Mexico desert, state investigators are storming Jeffrey Epstein's former Zorro Ranch, searching for buried bodies. Investigators arrived Sunday, have been examining the property since Monday. Nothing yet, but it is incredibly important that all of these happen right now. That it's the synchronicity of all of this is really dramatic, but it's also just so important that there are multiple investigations happening at the same time. You've got the congressional investigation to maybe able to prove some things. You've got the New Mexico state investigation, which may be able to prove some things. We don't know. And there should be other investigations launched within state departments, local police departments, wherever possible. If there are jurisdiction over these crimes, they should be investigated by those departments, even if it's years later. It just doesn't matter. It's all part of a cover-up now, conspiracy that is currently happening. So it deserves investigation, and it doesn't need the Justice Department to determine whether these things get investigated or not.
No, and something happened last night, and I don't watch Fox News, which is probably good news. I really don't. But I have this schedule of clips that I watch every morning, and I try to catch like the worst of Jesse Waters every single day. I really do. And Maria Bartiromo, I think that's how you say her name.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't care about Fox and Friends. They're not your friends. I don't care about anybody else. Greg Gutfield, literally, if he was in front of me right now, I would do unspeakable things to him he would never walk away from. And that's only because we live in Canada and know he'd get free healthcare if he came up here. However, Jesse Waters comes out and he's interviewing James Comer, and he's like, so this Zorro Ranch thing, you know how like Jesse Waters tries to, you're so cool about when he asks questions. So this Zorro Ranch thing. What's going on? James Comer gives up the fucking farm in the first 30 seconds. He's like, well, I don't know, but, we need answers, but I don't know if they'll find any there because the president in 2019 stopped an investigation into Zorro Ranch.
Right. He did say that. And actually, I had that clip lined up here. I don't know if I can find it right now, but I was blown away by that confession by Comer.
I'm sitting there going, yes to the kakistocracy for moments like this. Yes to the idiocracy for stuff like this, where dumb people like James Comer say the fucking quiet part out loud. And James Comer would suck the chrome off a mega bumper for attention from Donald Trump. Let me just put that out there too. So he says to Jeff, I'm paraphrasing, he's like, yeah, if Trump, you should stop this because he stopped it in 2019. Why on earth would he stop an investigation into the grounds around Zorro Ranch looking for bodies of possible murder victims? Why on earth would he have quietly stepped in? No one knew about it till today. That is 7 fucking years ago, dude.
No, look, this is much worse than it appears. They stopped every investigation into Epstein across the board. The FBI gave orders the second he was found dead. That's it. Drop everything. We're no longer investigating this guy. That was happening under the jurisdiction of Bill Barr, I think at the time, and it was certainly under the president's scope. For that to be happening and for us to be experiencing the same cover-up right now, or a similar cover-up where they're hiding the FBI files, the very investigations that were shut down in 2019, those are the same things they're hiding now. Well, that's all a cover-up. That's all an obstruction of justice. That's all a massive hiding of a crime. It's defrauding America of what, of our votes, of our good governance, of all these people who should be in jail. Bill Barr needs to figure out how he's going to handle all of this, because he should be in jail. So should Pam Bondi. Now, I don't think he's going, but I think that's,
Well, if good people get their opportunity, Pam Bondi will walk the plank, Bill Barr will walk the plank, everybody involved in this regime, so war crimes will walk the plank. We'll get into some of those in just a minute. We've got some Iran stories to get to that are very fucking serious.
Yeah.
But to your point, this is the definition of criminal conspiracy. This is the definition of criminal cover-up. This is the definition of fraud. This is the definition of defrauding the American people. The not just financial crimes here. There are murderous, rapey crimes. There are pedophile crimes, crimes against humanity, indignity to bodies, even if they do find something in Zorro Ranch. It stands to reason that they just can't run away from all of this. I've seen Donald Trump get out of a fucking jam before, but I'm watching him and I'm watching his body language and how low energy he is, angry he's getting. This is fucking getting to him. Because there are things he cannot stop, no matter how fucking powerful he is. He cannot stop these subpoenas. He cannot stop if we've got a bipartisan group of people who want to get to the bottom of this, which we now do. He cannot stop New Mexico from going in and investigating Zorro Ranch. He cannot stop these things. And if you look at him now as opposed to him 10 years ago, look at him now as opposed to when he became the president. That is a hollow, concerned, pissed off, completely fucking rabid loser now. He can't string a sentence together. He can't fucking, he knows it's coming for him. It's everything he can do not to talk about it. And so what he's doing is he's filling up the air right now with a war in Iran. He's filling up the air right now with calling Governor Mark Carney, the governor of Canada, his governor of Canada. He's filling up the air now with rhetoric and election reform, trying to steal the election, the SAVE Act. He is doing everything he can to prevent you from having this conversation with us, you from listening to us, and us from having this conversation with you, and any kind of legal accountability whatsoever that he cannot stop.
And to your point, this was his reaction today. This is story number 3 on the countdown today. This was his reaction to the news that it was his forces that took out the school with 175 children in Iran.
A new report says military investigation has found
We'll get it.
that the United States struck the school in Iran. As Commander-in-Chief, you take responsibility for that.
That is what?
As Commander-in-Chief, do you
For what?
for the strike on the school in Iran? A new report says the military investigation has found it was the United States that struck the school.
I don't know about it. Are you talking how do you respond to that?
I don't know about that. That is not actually true. The New York Times, CNN, BBC Verify, and Bellingcat have now all confirmed the United States struck the Minab school compound with the Tomahawk cruise missile, killing between 165 and 180 people, most of them children at a girls' school adjacent to an IRGC facility. The Pentagon used outdated DIA targeting data. How could that happen? They won't say who provided the intelligence, but that is the big question, because all of this is being, discovered to be an intelligence exercise in fraud and deception. And it could be that the Pentagon was given that wrong data, the targeting information, in order to create this very situation. But the unbelievable gall of the president, who knows very well what everyone is talking about, for him to say he knows nothing about it is a damned lie.
And he's repeated that lie at my count for the last 11 days. And that lie kind of vacillates between, remember yesterday, a couple of days ago, he's like, hey, everybody's got tomahawks. No, they don't. It could have been a generic tomahawk. There's no such thing. There are 4 countries sanctioned to use tomahawks, and the United States controls all the inventory of these tomahawk missiles on the ground. And I wrote a piece about it. On the ground, when they actually did the investigation, and it wasn't just U.S. military that did the investigation. Several countries in the international criminal court investigation, and then Al Jazeera did a criminal investigation. And as it turns out, and I think this is why it's really important, the Iranian state showing a cruise missile slamming into the compound adjacent to the school. Now, that school, according to Al Jazeera, had been a school separated from a munitions dump that about a block away since 2016. So you want to talk outdated data. You want to talk outdated targeting information. That's outdated by a fucking decade. So way to go, Kakistocracy. Way to gut the United States military of anybody that had any ability to be able to foresee this being a problem. Now, munitions experts analyzed it, identified it as a U.S. Tomahawk land attack missile. The weapon, and this is true, only the U.S. Navy operates using that weapon. It was launched from surface to air ship in a submarine. Bellingcat, BBC, New York Times, CNN, NPR, and the Washington Post all came to the same conclusion. Donald Trump's military massacred 175 children. 95 more are either maimed or in serious condition, and another 15 to 20. They took that and another 15 to 20 are out. And today's lie was even more ambiguous than the other lies. Like, if you remember last week, he's like, I heard it was Iran. Iran has generic tomahawks. I'm like, oh, fuck. Iran has off-brand tomahawks. And that was immediately rejected by a guy named Jeffrey Lewis. He's a distinguished scholar at the Global School of Middlebury College. He said Iran does not have tomahawks. The tomahawk is manufactured by Raytheon. It's been sold only to a small number of U.S. allies. Those allies are United Kingdom, Australia, Japan, the Netherlands. It has never, ever, ever been sold to Iran, which has been a U.S. adversary since the 1970s. And even when a reporter was like, listen, you're saying you have no idea what's going on. You're saying you have no clue what's happening. Everybody else says it's you. He's like, well, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, that was such a profound moment. And I wish I had that clip too, because I isolated, but it's a really good one with that one young reporter. I don't even know who it was. He said, how come you're the only one? You're the only person, not even the Pentagon. Nobody's saying the shit you're saying. You're just lying at us. Why come you're the only one that is making up these claims that you don't know anything about it? But what it gives us insight.
And his response is the same there. It's like, because I don't know enough. That's what he said. I don't know enough.
But it gives you insight into this guy.
Aren't you the fucking president of the United States?
Did you take out 175 girls or not?
Your job to know that kind of fucking stuff. And when you commit genocide at a school in Iran, you fucking massacre 200 children between the ages of 7 to 12 because you're either incompetent or you don't give a fuck about human life. And keep in mind, several months ago, they prepared for this and they removed the United States of America from the International Criminal Court membership team. They prepared for this. They knew that, and Hegseth, 2 days after this happened, he's like, listen, we're not your dad's woke military. We're not your politically correct military. So if I'm reading the tea leaves, what they're saying is we're fucking totally cool with this. We don't give a shit.
Well, I mean, you know who's totally cool with it is Vladimir Putin, who would love nothing more than to have a moral equivalency in the United States where he can say, hey, it's not just me committing these terrible human war crimes against humanity. It is Donald Trump as well. America does it all the time. Look what they did in Iran, which is why every bit of this war, as so far as it's been executed, again points to Russia. Absolutely everything. And I would want to know if the Russians were the ones who provided the location of the school. And if not them, was it the Israelis who laundered Russian information to get it to them, or was it the Israelis themselves? But the fact that they hit a school on day one, not a coincidence. That feels to me like it was a setup. It was a trap, just like this entire war is a trap. And we'll get to that in a second with Witkoff and Kushner.
Dude, those are the only two solutions here. Is that he was given some shitty intelligence, signals intelligence. His entire military apparatus is now stuffed with decision makers that are loyal to him and Jesus Christ, who think this is a fucking holy war. And the more Muslims, no matter how old you kill, the better off the rest of the world is going to be. So I need everybody to keep that in mind, because Christian Pete Hegseth, the guy that wrote about the American Crusades, the guy that said, we're not woke and Muslims are a danger and they're a dangerous religious military, has Deuce Volt put here. He believes that he's on a fucking crusade for Jesus Christ. And listen, the Christian nationalist movement, the violent Christian national movement, they've got no problem with this. They've got no problem. Like if you asked a Christian nationalist who Trump supports this war about those 175 dead school children, they'll tell you this, because I've seen this all around the ether of the internet over the past. Trump supporters are like, yeah, when you make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs. You know what I'm saying? It's no big deal
but that's
to
not
us.
the case. You don't get to say that. You don't get to commit war crimes, especially if you're the United States. You don't get to commit war crimes, especially when you're going to, turn on an entire terrorist network that is coming at you with sleeper cells. I mean, that is, this. I've called this treason. It is without a doubt a treasonous war. Everything about this war is treasonous. And they kept saying to us we couldn't say what he did in 2016 was treason because there wasn't a war. They said you can only use that term when there's a war. Well, there's a war now, and this is treasonous. the fact that we're executing this war in the way we are, the fact that the president is covering up for all these things, the fact that the president is committing war crimes, the fact that he's ordering our troops to be doing illegal attacks by taking out sovereign leaders of countries. I mean, this is not how things work in the world. And the president of the United States is setting America to be the fall guy for all his disastrous decisions, which he's doing on behalf of our biggest adversary. And that is where the treason part comes in. He's doing this for Russia. He's doing it for Russia and China. That is, at the end of the day, the reason why he's making all these awful decisions. And by the way, this is story number 2. It's day 12 of the war. The president's inner circle started on Russian intelligence. We'll get to that in a second. But right now, we have 3 merchant ships that were attacked in the Gulf today, unknown projectiles. They're on fire. There's a total of 14 vessels have now been hit since the war began. We have they were flying Thai, Japanese.
In Oman. Yeah.
It's incredible. The Thai cargo ship was struck in the Strait of the coast of Oman, exactly as you point out. 23 crew members aboard, and they're still missing. They could be dead at this point. I mean, this is not an uncostly war. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps said today it will not allow a single liter of oil through the Straits of Hormuz. 1/5 of the world's seaborne oil passes through the waterway. The U.S. military says it destroyed 16 mine-laying vessels yesterday. You know, Iran keeps laying those mines, but people are dying on both sides because of this foolhardy war. And the worst part of it is, you know, we now had the International Energy Agency pour 400 million barrels into the markets because they're worried about oil market chaos. If this continues to happen, the entire world could be thrown into chaos with oil prices, there being an oil shortage, but also oil prices climbing.
And you know what that means to Vladimir Putin? He just won the oil lottery. Do you know how much money he's making right now at $120 odd dollars a barrel? He gets to 130. That guy can restart his military. He can do whatever he wants. And when we talk about what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, something else happened today. Actually, it was 2 days ago, where someone involved with the Trump regime was like, "Hey, we just a U.S. carrier destroyer ferried a whole bunch of oil through the Straits of Hormuz." That was later found to be a lie. As a matter of fact, completely to the opposite. U.S. military and U.S. assets in the area are flatly refusing. As a matter of fact, the USS Gerald Ford is no longer in the Mediterranean. Okay. They are flatly refusing. Yeah, flatly refusing to do anything for anybody in the Strait of Hormuz. They're flatly refusing to ferry any merchant ships through the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran owns everything in that region now. They own it.
Yeah.
They are just bombing fucking people and speedboats. Like they're driving fucking speed loads with massive explosions into the side of boats. They're launching missiles at boats. They're taking oil refineries in Oman. They're hitting oil refineries in Riyadh. They're hitting oil refineries in Kuwait. They are not allowing anybody to get through. Fucking mean it, to the point where the guy who was the second in command for the IGRC the other day goes, "Get ready for $200 a barrel, $200 barrels of oil, because we're not letting fucking shit through other than our shit." So, like, and they're doing it. They mean it. They mean it.
Yeah, everything
that's going on in that region is to Iran's advantage. Now, here's the catch. Today, it's actually kind of an interesting story. Today, Canada inked in an LNG and oil deal with India. So if you go through the Strait of Hormuz, you can get all the way down there. Iran sells a lot of oil to India. You can actually make your way through the sea. You can port. That's why this is so inconvenient for states like India. Now, that deal with India is to replace what they're not going to be getting through the Straits of Hormuz. So how important now has Canada become? The butterfly effect of Donald Trump's indiscriminate decision-making to start a war against Iran is continuing to elevate countries and destroy countries. Now, let's add another factor into that. Today, the UAE, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia all announced deals, grateful deals, with the Ukraine government to start pouring interceptor drones and drone technology and arms from Ukraine into that region. And they are now steadfast announcing these long-term military partnerships with UAE Gulf countries, saying that we stand with Ukraine. So this has completely changed the mathematical equation for Ukraine and completely put Donald Trump on his back heels. And to your point, this is exactly what Vladimir Putin wanted. Exactly.
It is. And, that also ties into the number one story. I just want to touch on what you just spoke about. What Canada is doing around the world is basically, and it's not basically, they're doing this. They're creating a union to replace the former NATO union, which is going to include all the 1.5 billion people. And just think about that number, 1.5 billion people who live in democracies around the world, who want nothing to do with dictatorships and who want nothing to do with the United States. The United States has 330 million people. You do the math about who is going to be the bigger democratic power in the world. Is it going to be the Canadian, Australian, New Zealand, South Korea, and who knows who else alliance, which are going to be about 1.5 billion people that Mark Carney is currently putting together? Or is it going to be the United States, which is going to drift off into some isolated stage, where it becomes a racist, pariah state around the world? And if Americans haven't quite got that in their head, I'm sure many have, most have. But, the MAGA world that is still holding on to this belief that Donald Trump is somehow going to deliver greatness upon them is sorely mistaken. That greatness is being taken away every second Donald Trump is in power by people like Mark Carney. He's doing a tremendous job on the world stage navigating this.
Dude, Mark Carney is a MAGA killer because he's competent. And he says what he's going to do. And he's gathered 40 middle power and a couple of superpower together, Democratic Union, the 40, and they're going to announce this in the next couple of days. But an announcement for this 40 union kind of NATO adjacent group of democratic countries that Carney will lead, is leading, has put together, has trade security, economic security. We've got rare earth materials, energy security, all wrapped up in it. It's like a brand new fucking free trade NATO where we're not only trading, we're going to be trading ammunition and intelligence. And now we got an army of 1.5 billion full of people who want nothing to do with this fucking ass clown. Like they want nothing to do with this ass clown. Let me add on top of that. Today, the EU voted 430 to 100 to seriously deepen ties with Canada to the point where Canada is now effectively not an EU nation, but an EU nation. So
everyone's going to be, all these democratic countries are going to be EU nations. Australia is, South Korea, Canada is. It's all becoming one big, powerful democratic force that excludes the United States. And it is that you can't overstate how important all this is. This is, dramatically changing the geopolitics of the world. But as Carney says, you're either at the table or you get served as a meal, whatever his name, whatever the expression is, or you're on the menu. He says, Canada's going to be at the table. So are these other democratic countries representing 1.5 billion people around the world. That is an extraordinary number. People have to factor that number in when they consider who is going to be the great superpower bloc in the world. And it's not America. It just is not America anymore. So
it's right there.
Pointing something to that little Canadian flag.
Little flag. See that beautiful maple leaf. You see that thing we've been
see it up there.
We've been laying in wait with our common sense. And I watched a video today of a guy named Gunther Eagleman. He's this MAGA influencer, Gunther Eagleman.
Yeah, I don't know him, but
he threatened Canada today. So I start Googling who Gunther Eagleman is. He's like a paid MAGA guy, right? He makes hundreds of thousands of dollars just recycling information. He's got millions of followers on Twitter. So as I'm Googling him, someone recorded a picture of him at a Starbucks wearing a sweater tied like this in the front, like he's a college freshman, sitting at a Starbucks enjoying a newspaper, and eating a banana. But the interesting part was eating the banana with a spoon. And I'm like, man, Gunther, you know what Canadian men do to other men who come to Canada, go to Starbucks and eat a fucking banana with a spoon? I'll tell you what we do. Doesn't matter your orientation. Dude, it doesn't matter where you're from. He would go home in a fucking body bag. You know how soft that is, watching this guy take the top off the banana?
I don't even imagine Canadians are going to send anyone home in a coffee, in a body bag, because frankly, Canadians aren't very violent people. They're not even that pissed. I mean, I know you can be, but they don't like.
War crimes exist. Do you know why war crimes exist? Because
why?
Did you know that?
No, this is a true story.
Them. First World War. Canada gets involved. And we just start massacring people like the Germans. We're like, we don't give a shit about the rules here. Where's the trench?
Really?
So we'd get them at night. We'd light it on fire. We would capture guys. We would cut their, excuse my language, testicles off, put them in their mouth and nail them to boards, build a catapult, and shoot Germans into German camps. The message says hi from Canada. And after the First World War, the international criminal courts are like, fuck, Canada, huh? Yeah. They're like, we need some rules for Canada. Thus,
You know what?
the International Criminal Court
I
exists.
love Canada to death, so I'm not going to. I have so much time for what Carney's doing, and I just support it. But I've got to say one thing now as we get to the number one story. This story starts and ends with a guy named Steve Witkoff. And I've called this today in my narrative newsletter this morning, Witkoff's War, because this idiot, really a total idiot, has been either played by Putin to the extent that he no longer understands the world game. But, you know, it's clear now that from his CNBC interview yesterday that Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner held private, unsupervised, on the side phone calls with a Russian official named Yuri Ushakov, who's Putin's foreign policy point man. Now, you don't really do that kind of stuff in a war, have your private side tete-a-tetes with your, Putin's advisors who are giving him what? He certainly told them a lot of lies. He said that the Russians did not give the Americans the Iranians any intelligence. But we know this guy. Ushakov is next to Kushner and Witkoff everywhere. He's their handler. There is no other term you could use. He's the guy that handles these two Russian assets for Vladimir Putin. These two Russian assets that are in the White House that are operating on behalf of Vladimir Putin, who directed the president to start this war. I mean, that basically is what the president said himself the other day, as you carried on deanblundell.substack.com. The president admits that he did this because it was the instructions or the direction he was getting from Jared Kushner and Witkoff.
Yeah. That's the beginning of the end for this war. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio. That is the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
And it's also the beginning of the end for Donald Trump. If I know one thing about Donald Trump, when he's caught, and he loves himself a little plausible deniability, everything's at arm's length. When you hear him say, I don't know, you'll have to ask Pete. I don't know, you'll have to ask Marco. I can guarantee you one thing, it all fucking came from him. And he will tell them, here's what you do. And after you do it, he'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So Donald Trump wanted to invade Iran. Donald Trump wanted to be BMOC. Donald Trump thought he was a strong man. Donald Trump listened to the wrong people. Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, they held fucking private meetings with everybody. And the only goal of these private meetings was shadow diplomacy. It was what kind of financial arrangement can we weasel out for people on the inside of the Trump regime? What kind of fucking real estate deals, rare earth deals, energy deals can we do? And how can we leverage our strength and our help and who we are in the American brand to get that? We don't give a fuck about peace in the Middle East. None of them do. None of them give a shit about Ukraine. None of them give a shit about any of those countries. Each one of those people has a vested financial interest in this war. Every single one of them, including Donald Trump. Whether or not they'd be paid to do this, whether or not it's attached to so many different KGB, Kremlin relationships, it doesn't matter. Steve Witkoff has been laundering Russian money on behalf of KGB, on behalf of the oligarchy for 37 fucking years.
Yeah.
So is Donald Trump. So listen, when we have this conversation, and you know that Steve Witkoff is not, he is a real estate guy. He doesn't have an iota of diplomatic experience before becoming the special envoy for everything Donald Trump wants to sue every single fucking war-torn country out of. That's all he's there for.
He's the peace envoy of all things.
Interesting story about Jared fucking Kushner. Jared Kushner's an idiot. Jared Kushner's a moron. Yeah, the Kushner brand only exists because his brother actually is pretty good at business. His dad might have been pretty good at business, and his co-signs everything. That dude is a kept man. Everything runs. We've talked to Lev about it. Everything runs through Ivanka and her dad and whatever brain trust they have in that little cabal fucking sexual weirdness that he has with his daughter Ivanka. So aside from that, what we're now finding out is not only is he not interested in solving any wars, he's very interested in seeing how he can profit from wars. And he's very interested in seeing how everybody around him that supports him can profit from wars. And that's why he's here. That's why Witkoff exists. Witkoff is a stunned fucking traitor to the United States of America and has been for the better part of a fucking half century.
I've not gone into my Kushner files for a while now, but I can tell you for sure that inside those files, I can draw you a diagram showing exactly how Kushner is connected to Russian money, vastly through his tech empire, which has been proven to be funded by one of Putin's oligarchs. He's also the guy who got a lot of funding from Leon Black while he was in the White House, or the Apollo Group while he was in the White House. There's a lot of connections. And of course, before the elections, the first time round, he was on the phone to the Russian ambassador asking for a secure back channel with the Russians because he thought that was a good idea for the incoming son-in-law of the president of the United States to ask for that. And then there's this comment from the president yesterday. We saw this yesterday on your site, but it's just worth remembering.
No return, and the United States found it intolerable, in my opinion, based on what Steve and Jared and Pete and others were telling me, Marco, so involved, that I thought that they were going to attack us. I thought they would, if we didn't do this at the time we did it, I think they had in mind to attack us. And
I think they had in mind to attack us. That isn't true. It's just not true.
And much like his own military said, it was our Tomahawk that hit his school, his own military, like immediately after they leveled that as an excuse for starting a war with Iran, attacking Iran, that people, including school children. His own military there is no imminent threat from Iran whatsoever. No imminent threat.
I mean, think about
it.
And
if you notice the language part of it, he's like, in my opinion, based on their opinion, they were going to get us first. In my opinion, they were going to get us first.
That's why it's so important, Dean, because he's getting information from people who are getting information directly from Putin's handler, Ushakov. So you got Jared giving him the opinion, hey, you should strike them because they might strike you first. But Jared is getting information from Putin's dude. Witkoff is Putin's dude as well. He's also getting information, he confirmed on CNBC yesterday, in private conversations from Putin's dude. So all this stuff that's getting to Don, and I'm sure Hexeth does, and I'm sure Marco does, all this information which gave Donald Trump permission to come up with the idea or the opinion that Iran might attack him first, well, it's being fed to him by Russian spies. And that's the problem with the treason we're having right now. That's the problem with the Republican Party playing footsie with the Russians, with the Republican Party allowing the Russian regime and the Israelis and whoever else you want to throw in there, this transnational criminal enterprise, from taking over the American executive branch. This is what you get, guys. You get a fake war that it puts the entire world at peril and the American people at peril. And it's something they're all going to have to answer for and pay for, hopefully, this November elections.
Well said. Well said. And with that, brings us to the end of the FiveStack. We got through all 5 stories in almost an hour. Actually, it was an hour and 2 minutes.
It's a good show. Really interesting.
You really brought the heat today, dude.
Well, these are like, there's a Venn diagram, Putin and Epstein, those 2 things I can talk about. Those 2 things I can talk about, for sure.
But it all matters. It all matters, right? And folks, this is the kind of stuff that you're not going to get on Fox and Friends. This is the kind of stuff that you're not going to get on CNBC. You're not going to get this on MS Now. You're not going to get, definitely not going to get this on Barry Weiss's CBS. They're going to treat all of this like it's a legitimate opportunity to stand up for America's interests. It ain't. Y'all are fucked over. You got played by Russia. You got played by China. You're getting played right now. You're getting, and by the way, you want to talk unsafe. We're now up to 16 different U.S. consulates that have been attacked, shot, or bombed on 5 different continents, including here in Canada. And you remember the other day I was talking about false flags? Now, apparently, Toronto police are investigating as to whether or not this had anything to do with anybody who didn't like the U.S. consulate, or if it might have been somebody involved at the U.S. consulate going, shoot it up, doggy. Let's get it. Because they can't see. Yeah. So, I mean, all of this matters. And it all matters because we spend a lot of time reading between the lines and we don't watch mainstream media. Like, I really fucking don't. I've got some sources, good news, by the way. If you go to, Ground News. If you go to groundnews.com/FiveStack, that's where I get my information. I lean on Axios, lean on Reuters, lean on a couple of different outlets. But, dude, I never watch anybody present the news to me anymore. Never. Because there's a revolution going on. And if you're also part of this resistance, part of what we do here, you're getting the fact that we've distilled it for you. So the best thing you could do to make this thing go is to share this content, share this podcast, share the FiveStack, share the Substack Live, Please go and share the work of this man here on my left, maybe on your right, depending on where you're watching. Zev Shalev, narrative.org. One of the greatest investigative reporters. We're in his fucking wheelhouse, which is why this is so easy for him and why it's so fun for me is I get to do this with someone who's been at this for 10 years. He's right. He is deadly accurate. He is fact-based in a post-truth society. So go to narrative.org, subscribe, Kyra at the top. And if you think about it, I've got 50% off for the rest of the week as well. Give your subscription to Lev, but if you think about it, you got a couple bucks and you want to come over and find deanblundell.substack.com, 50% off for the remainder of the week. It's my 1-year anniversary of joining this beautiful resistance
Congratulations.
movement.
Now, is it our 1-year anniversary too? It must be soon.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, this is a year. I went and
We
looked.
should have
I
a
think we were
birthday
year
party
like
or
a
something.
week.
I don't know. Shouldn't we?
We
I
can.
don't know. We should do
can get together
something
for
to.
coffee
We'll
or
commemorate it
cocktail.
some way. And while you're doing all that great stuff by going to deanblundell.substack.com to subscribe to him for that 50% off deal, I highly recommend his work on everything, especially the work you've been doing on Canada, which is the reason why you have that giant maple leaf behind you, is because you have been one of the single voices that has been pointing out what Canada is doing around the world, the realignment of the balance of power in the world under Mark Carney. You've been ahead of the story by so long, and you continue to do that great work over there. Plus, you've got amazing stuff on the Iranian war that we've been showing you some of those clips today. And I'm quite sure when you get off this thing, you're going to be writing about Jeffrey Epstein and the new evidence that came out from today's deposition.
You know what? That story just got me out of going to Pilates tonight, so that's great. Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate
Well,
it.
you know
Good
what?
work
While
today.
you're out of Pilates at 7 p.m., we're doing a Epstein Network special with Ellie and Kate and maybe Waj, maybe and Lev. And you, if you want to join,
Can I jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. We're doing it at 7
Oh my
o'clock.
God.
Everyone should join in. It's going to be a big conversation tonight. This was before the news came out of this deposition today. So you can imagine there'll be lots of opinions and thoughts coming out. And Ellie's been investigating this particular 302 very, very closely. So I'm interested to hear what Ellie Leonard has to say. We'll see you tonight at 7 p.m. Dean will be there as well. Have a great day, everybody. And thank you for watching The Five Stack.